Okay, so have you ever felt like you're putting in like all this effort towards your goals, but you're not really getting anywhere? It's like running on a treadmill. We're doing a deep dive on that today. Mindful self-discipline. And trust me, this isn't your typical self-help lecture.
No, not at all.
We're going to be checking out two different summaries of Giovanni Dienstmann's book, one from Get Abstract and the other from So Brief. And we really want to uncover how to make self-discipline actually work for you, not against you, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how do you tune out all the noise and just focus on what really matters?
You know what's really refreshing about Dienstmann's approach is that he ditches the whole brute force thing.
Yeah.
He gets that willpower alone. Like it only gets you so far. I mean,
Totally.
we've all been there staring at that extra slice of cake.
Oh, yeah. It's like a willpower standoff.
Yeah.
And the cake usually wins.
Totally. And Dienstmann says that to really make a change that sticks, you need a more well-rounded approach, one that connects what you do with what you really, really want. He calls this the 3 pillars framework: aspiration, awareness, action.
Okay, I like it already. 3 pillars. That sounds way more doable than climbing Mount Self-Control. So let's break it down. What's the deal with aspiration? It's got to be more than just setting any random goal right.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's all about figuring out the why behind your goals. Dienstmann actually suggests this in the So Brief summary. He says you should really dig deep into your aspirations by asking yourself a bunch of why questions.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to write a book. Why is that important to you? What's that deep down desire that's driving you?
It's like wanting to write a book isn't just about the book. It's about the creativity, right? Like getting your own unique perspective out there, or maybe even inspiring other people.
Exactly. And Get Abstract had a great example about work. Say your goal is to be more productive. Ask yourself why. Is it to impress your boss? Or is it to free up more time for what truly matters? Family passion projects, things like that. Understanding those deeper reasons, that's the key to unlocking real self-discipline.
So it's about making sure your actions match up with your values. That makes so much sense because when you're motivated by something deeper, it's not a struggle anymore. It's something you actually want to do.
You nailed it. And that inner motivation makes the second pillar way easier: awareness.
Okay, awareness. Let's dive into that one. Is it over-analyzing every single thought and action we have?
Not really. Both summaries say that awareness in this context, it's not about judging yourself, it's more about being mindful and observing. Kind of like becoming a curious observer of your own thoughts, feelings, and habits, but without being super critical of yourself.
So instead of beating yourself up for checking your phone every 5 seconds.
Exactly. It's about just hitting pause and noticing that urge.
Yeah.
The So Brief summary has this cool tool called the PAW method. It stands for Pause, Awareness, Willpower.
Ooh, I love a good acronym. Okay, so pause, awareness, willpower. So it's about making intentional choices throughout the day, even in those little moments that seem insignificant.
You got it. Let's say you're working on something and you get that itch to check social media. The PAW method says, first you pause. Then you just acknowledge that urge without judgment. And then, with that awareness, you tap into your willpower to make a deliberate choice.
So it's about creating a tiny window of choice instead of just automatically giving in to distractions.
Exactly. And that's how willpower, when it's backed by awareness, becomes a super powerful tool to help you reach your goals.
This is making so much sense. Okay, so we've got our why with aspiration, our how with awareness, but how do we actually put it all into action? That's the big question, right? It's like we've cracked the code. We've got aspiration to set our sights, awareness to keep us on track, and then action is where the magic happens.
Right.
But let's be real for a sec. Taking action isn't always a walk in the park. Life throws curveballs, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And Dienstmann gets that. He dives into those common roadblocks we all hit when we're trying to build self-discipline, like procrastination,
Procrastination.
distractions,
Yeah.
even those sneaky self-sabotaging habits that trip us up.
Oh, tell me about it. Self-sabotage is the worst. It's like, you should be doing something, but then, bam, Netflix appears. Or a social media black hole sucks you in. It's like our brains have a mind of their own.
It's that classic dopamine trap, which both summaries talk about. Basically, our brains love those quick hits of dopamine, that feel-good chemical.
Like the reward chemical.
Exactly. The problem is those instant gratification activities, they can really derail us from the stuff that matters, the things that align with our aspirations, the meaningful work.
Yeah, it's like our brains crave that quick reward, even if it means messing up our long-term goals. Kind of depressing when you think about it.
It's a struggle, for sure. But Dienstmann has some super interesting strategies to deal with it. The So Brief summary lays out a few, and one that caught my eye was Monk Week.
Monk Week. Now I'm really curious. What is that?
Okay, so picture this. For 1 week, you ditch all sources of easy dopamine.
Like what?
Social media, streaming services, sugary snacks, anything that gives you that quick but fleeting sense of reward, you know.
Wow, sounds intense.
It's not about deprivation, though. It's like intentionally creating space to reset your brain's reward system.
Interesting. So it's like hitting the reset button on your dopamine receptors.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part is Monk Week is temporary. It's just about proving to yourself that you have the power to choose. You can choose activities that nourish your mind and spirit, even if they don't give you that instant dopamine rush.
That makes sense. But let's be honest, not all of us are ready to embrace our inner monk just yet. What about those of us who need a gentler nudge?
Dienstmann has something for that too. So Brief talks about this other technique called procrastinate distraction.
Procrastinate distraction, is that even a thing?
It is, and it's genius. You basically delay those distractions.
All right.
It's like you're negotiating with a part of your brain that wants that quick fix.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. You're basically saying, okay, you can have that social media scroll, but only after I finish this chapter. Or I'll watch that episode, but only after I tackle this task.
So you're like outsmarting your inner procrastinator. I like it.
Exactly. And by delaying that gratification, you're actually flexing those self-discipline muscles. You're showing yourself you can prioritize what matters, even when those tempting distractions are right there.
I love how we're like reframing self-discipline. It's not about fighting ourselves. It's more like we're working with our brains.
It's definitely a more positive way to look at it. And speaking of being proactive, Dienstmann talks about these things called commitment devices.
Commitment devices. Okay.
Yeah, they're basically like obstacles you set up in advance to make it harder to fall back into those habits you're trying to break.
So kind of like giving your phone to a friend while you're working. Or using one of those apps that block certain websites.
Exactly. You're basically anticipating your weak moments.
Yeah.
And setting yourself up to win, like a form of preemptive self-love, you know?
Totally. So we've got all these great tools and strategies, but what about those times when we stumble? Life happens, right? Motivation dips, willpower takes a nosedive. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, for sure.
How do we deal with those moments and still stay true to this whole mindful self-discipline thing?
That's where the mindful part really comes in. Both summaries talk about the importance of being kind to yourself. It's about realizing that messing up is part of the process. It doesn't mean you failed.
Yeah, but that's way easier said than done. Am I right?
Oh, totally.
Our instinct is to just beat ourselves up when we slip up.
Totally. But Giesmann's like, hey, give yourself a break. There's this quote from So Brief that I love. He says, self-discipline is not self-denial. It is self-affirmation.
Ooh, I like that.
It's about realizing you're worthy of your goals. And that discipline is a tool to help you get there, not a punishment.
It's like you're choosing to support yourself. That's really powerful.
Exactly. It means you're allowed to be imperfect. You can learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward with purpose.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
I think it's this. Mindful self-discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about making conscious choices every day. Choices that line up with your deepest values and what you truly want to achieve. It's about realizing that you have the power to create a life you love, one small step at a time.
And maybe even discovering that the journey itself can be just as rewarding as the destination, right?
Couldn't have put it better myself.
This was fantastic. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into mindful self-discipline. Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.